Hi, my name is Dr. Cordova-Arrington, and I'm the Assistant Professor of Flute at the University of Oregon School of Music and Dance. Today I'll be playing some of the OMEA wind and percussion audition materials, but I'll be playing the flute excerpts. Okay, you might have noticed that I took a breath the first time I played this chromatic scale. I would like to give people just a couple of different options for playing this chromatic scale. Um, if it's really challenging for you to play the scale in one breath, as I did the second time when I played it, then just take a breath after the middle C right before the end. And here's a tip. If you find when you're playing the flute that you need to sneak a breath in, you should try to disguise it, and this is how you do it. After you take the breath, make sure that you come back in at the same dynamic level that you left, and you'll hear less of a gap. This is called bridging the breath and can be really useful. I know when I'm playing with ensembles and with orchestras, I do it all the time because sometimes it's just tricky. you know, one of the reasons why I think that it can be tricky to play in one breath is because as flute players, we really love the low register. So my second tip would be be efficient with your air use. So make sure you're not really honking out the beginning of this so that you can manage the air better. So don't give away all of your energy at the very beginning, even if you do a great job at getting that low C and that low register first octave notes out. Don't waste your energy there. Instead, think about crescendoing to the top. And my last tip is that for many people, including myself, as you get into the upper register, it can be really hard to kind of like move these fingers around. So when you're practicing, start at the problem area, which is usually around that high G sharp, A sharp, B, C area, right? Don't go from the very beginning. Start where the problem, begins, and then sort of work backwards. So I might start with the four 16th notes leading up to the high C, and then sort of add on four notes before that, and then et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then, work on playing that beautiful chromatic scale going down from the top high C. That was fun, wasn't it? So that is Allegro con fuoco. Believe it or not, this sort of heartstring music, very passionate, it's totally my jam. And because I'm very much of a ham performer, so you can identify with that. This is your moment to shine. Or let's say like this isn't your jam, and you kind of like music that's less in the appassionata style. This is your opportunity to wear a different hat. Most often when I hear this etude performed, I'm always asking students to play with more vibrato and more intense vibrato, with more character. So why don't you start there in your practice? I think very often when we're in the practice rooms, something that I have struggled with too is making sure that you are practicing like your character performance or practicing performance, right? So ask yourself in the beginning, what is it that I want to communicate to my audience? Or what is it that Anderson wanted to communicate to the audience? And that can actually be a really fantastic place to really start exploring the flute sound. Now, to the technical end of this, my recommendation is that you work on this with the subdivisions, because very often, I don't know what happens when we're playing long half notes, we totally lose sense of the pulse. This has absolutely happened to me before. So my recommendation, actually, when I'm playing, I'm thinking these eighth notes in the beginning. So, da, dee, bop, beep, bop, beep, or whatever tempo that I'm playing. At least in the beginning when I'm practicing, I'm really trying to make sure that I have a good sense of pulse, even in the long notes. So I would start with working with your inner subdivisions to make sure that you really establish a good pulse, even in the long notes. And then lastly, I think my third tip for this is, measure 15 is the hardest measure in this whole thing. Because the harmonic rhythm, which means that the harmonies change very quickly. It changes every beat rather than every 2 beats, right? Or every measure. And so sometimes that measure can come as a surprise for all of us. So I would say maybe start your practice after you do all of your fun character exploration or practicing performing to get a sense of the character. Go directly to that measure 15 and just really iron it out with your metronome so that you can, so that it's not a surprise when that harmonic rhythm gets faster. So I absolutely love playing Bach's music. There's just something so special about Bach's music for me personally as a performer. So I think one of the most important things to remember about playing this Siciliano movement is to make sure that you have this sort of dancing vibe, right? Or dancing sway, right? So sometimes what I'd recommend, and you might feel this is a little silly, I actually conduct myself sometimes when I'm practicing or will sing through the melody so that I can get a sense of how the pulse moves. Not just like what the pulse is, but how that pulse moves. So, yeah. So I would highly recommend, especially if you're practicing and you're by yourself, right, that you go for it and you conduct yourself and sing the melody, because you can get a lot of information through conducting. So that's my first tip, is to conduct this. My second tip would be to sort of listen to non-flute players playing Bach's music, believe it or not. I get a lot of my inspiration from other instrumentalists, and I think too often when we're learning a piece, we will just listen to someone of our instrument playing the piece that we're working on. But what I would recommend is start to collect, an iPod list or a Spotify list of performers playing Baroque era music, like your favorite Baroque violinists, your favorite Baroque singers, and listen to that music, and you'll get a lot of the spirit of the music in the piece that you're playing. Um, yeah, so those are just a few of my tips, and I will go ahead and now play the Piccolo Excerpt. The key to playing this excerpt is thinking about the shape of the air. So, the toughest part for most playing this piccolo excerpt is actually the bit at a measure 6. If you think about like just making sure that all of these high notes are under one umbrella of air, it's gonna make it so much easier to play. Just one air shape. If you think like air applied to each note or every two notes, it's just way too stressful. Don't do that. One way that you can sort of get used to playing with one stream of air is to slur it. So as just a practice. So if you did da dee da dee da dee da dee da dum be da dee. And then you can actually even do a crescendo to even make sure you've got a really good connected airstream to pull you through. Then try playing it as written with the articulation, and I promise it's going to be much easier. Another thing that I think is important to remember about this is that, you know, keep the opening light. I think with piccolo, the tendency can be to overplay. So just put maybe a word at the top of your music that says chill. It's okay. But then when you get to the forte at measure 14, then you can totally, pull out all the stops. But in the beginning, just nice and easy and relaxed. Good luck. This has been so much fun. And I'm going to leave my email address below. And let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to reach out. I'm always available. All right, signing off. Bye.